During these unsettled times in our country, even small changes can make a difference. We are checking in with our buddy, Dr. Ian Smith, the author of several best-selling books on healthy eating and lifestyles. Hello, good morning to you, Dr. Ian.
Good morning, Molly. Always good to be with you.
Always good to see you, if even remotely. We prefer having you in studio, but it's good to see you. Let's talk about how things are going in Chicago, how you and your family are doing.
Yeah, things are, like the rest of the country. Things have been somewhat volatile, but things I think, are making a great turn. I think people have settled in to the idea of what this is all about in the country. People are peaceful, still protesting in large numbers. My family and I, we participated in one. It was awesome. To experience walking shoulder to shoulder with white people and Asian people and Latino people who all want peace and unity and fairness. It's very, very moving. And several times during the walk, I was just overcome with emotion just to think that other people who don't necessarily look like me, but who share the same interest, who share the love of me and my people and want us to be treated fairly. So it's an extremely moving experience when you spent most of your life feeling like others are not sensitive to you, or others don't understand you, or don't want to understand you, or discriminate against you.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point about that. And usually you talk to us about healthy eating and things like that. But I'm so glad that you're joining us to talk about this, because you're a voice that we trust. You're a regular on the show. Our viewers trust you, too. And so I think it's important to share these stories. And recently, and only recently, we've been asking our guests to share a time, something recent, where they feel they've been the victim or target of racism. Can you share a story like that?
Well, I can, but let me just first say that people have to understand that when people mention the phrase systemic racism, it's not about whether or not you call people names or whether or not you individually have a problem with people of other races. That's not systemic racism. Systemic racism is racism that is already incorporated into the systemic structure, whether it be in medicine, whether it be in politics, whether it be in finance, it doesn't matter. And we can't deny the racism. This is a time for the country to talk. This is a great inflection point for us. This is a time for us as a country to say, let's have this conversation. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be embarrassing, uncomfortable. That's okay. If we can at least have the conversation, then we can move on to some of the solutions. And what people will realize is that not that they are racist intentionally, but there are things that they've learned that they didn't realize in their way of thinking that may have racial tendencies. So I just want people to understand that don't look at the word racism as it being you're a bad person because you're trying to do something bad. It may be a systemic racial issue, which is what people are trying to talk about. Let's address the systems, whether newsrooms need to be more diverse, Hollywood needs to be more diverse, more stories of people of color need to be shown more. So this is an important conversation for the country, and this is for the soul of our country. If you believe in equality and the Constitution and all the things that we talk about that makes America what I think is the greatest country in the world, by the way, then let's examine it and let's see how we can all do better. I personally, have had several instances of racism, in New York City, where I work, going to do shows in New York, being in a suit and a tie and being passed by cabs, yellow cabs, who have their lights on in New York. A taxi is available when your light is on, when the light is on, and you raise your hand on the side of the street, which is how you call a cab in New York, and to have cabs just pass you by. I mean, literally like zoom right by you, and you're waving and waving and waving. One time it was so bad that we had to get a woman, a white woman actually, to wave a cab down for us because they would stop for her. So we asked her to come out, she waved the cab down, and then we got into the cab. So, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have, how famous you are, how rich you are. Unfortunately, the color of your skin in many people's eyes becomes the determination of who you are and who your character is. And we my stories are similar to many others.
Yeah, and I think you make such a great point with that story in particular, because it's so, I don't know if I want to say subtle. It's maybe not so subtle, but it's not a name calling situation. It's just, and I believe that happens. And it's probably hard to pick just one story because you probably have hundreds, if not thousands. And I made this point recently to someone that it's not just the police, for example, and you bring up that point. You talk about schools and businesses and all these other institutions. It's the target might be police right now because that's where we've seen this extreme example, but it's up to all of us as individuals, as parents, and the example that we set to be inclusive and accepting and have these conversations so that we can learn, because some people are well-intentioned, but we still make mistakes as it relates to dealing with people of other races.
And Molly, that's everyone. Black people also have issues. It's not that this is not, one race has a problem, but when you look at what the systemic racism has been for a long time, it's typically been those who've been in power, the majority, having these issues. And I just want to say, police officers are not bad people. There are a lot of great police officers, but there are certain things that are built into the policing system that tend to give people the license to do things that are not ethical, that are unethical. And so, I think that we have to continue to have this conversation, but you have to have the conversation with yourself first. You have to. And what really saddens me as a person who loves America, who believed as a child that this is a melting pot. Remember, you're taught in social studies in 3rd grade, America is the great melting pot. What really saddens me is the people who are silent. And I was saying to a friend of mine, silence sometimes can be the loudest voice in the room. When you know something is wrong and you stand by and don't say anything, or you don't try to fix it, even though you're not doing the thing that's bad, your silence is equally bad. And so people, once again, what I love about seeing the protest is the diversity of the protest. Molly, we're talking small towns in southern Illinois that have a population of black people of 10, 15, 20 black people, and most of the marches are all white people. These are people saying enough is enough. And last thing I want to say to you is this. What people have to understand is that African Americans and other people of color, they're not asking to be treated better. They're asking to be treated equal. That's it. No one's asking for more than equality. And why is it a bad thing to say, just look at me as equal? When you see my resume, don't see that I'm a black person. I'm not going to appeal to your clientele, your demographic. Treat me as an equal. And that's the key here. We just want equality.
We ran out of time, but just want to ask you really quickly, are you hopeful? Do you think these conversations are going to have that change is going to happen?
I think for the first time in my life, that this is an opportunity. If we continue, we got to continue. We just can't let it can't be a flash in the pan. But if we continue the hard work, we continue the conversations, we continue to be inclusive, I think this is going to be one of the greatest turning points in American history. And I'm happy to say that I was able to live through it, and my children have lived through it, so it can be better for future generations, and we can be a bigger and stronger country. On Instagram, I post a lot about this, so follow me on Instagram at Dr. Ian Smith. Spell the doctor out, I-A-N Smith. And thank you, Molly, for allowing me to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I got chills. I love what you just said, and I love you too. Thank you so much for joining us.
Love you.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Ian has dozens of best-selling books. His later one is Mind Over Weight, Curb Cravings, Find Motivation, and Hit Your Number in 7 Simple Steps. You can find out more about him by going to driansmith.com or on Instagram. He's there too, at Dr. Ian Smith.